Mic testing. How's our microphone? Is it okay? Okay, we're here live at the Pilosopo podcast. In a few moments, we will start our interview with my good friend, the LTO Regional Director for Region 7, Mr. Victor Emmanuel Kaindik. Ano yung tunod na yung answer,
Oh,
Victor Emmanuel Kaindik.
Victor.
What do your high school friends call you? Is there like
Vic.
Vic, ra? Don't you have like a term of endearment back in high school?
Wala, bugiro.
Okay, we're gonna talk to this guy and make sure you guys have questions, okay? Especially about traffic, about the LTO, about all those issues, please. I think we can be seen in both our Facebook pages, on your Facebook page as well, Vic. So make sure you guys post your questions for Vic and the rest of the guys. Hold on, I'm trying to see if I can see the video on my Facebook page. There it is. Mic testing. How's our microphone? Is it okay? Vic, so make sure you guys. I think the audio should be just a little low sa magawas ang audio. Paubusan ako akong audio sa telepono ba? I mean ba? Kaya magawas na rin makita ba nung ganyan. So it's here. Hold on, ah. Hold on, let's answer this. Hello? Yeah. Yes. Dan, Hmm. Hmm. Friday pa bitaw, Thursday pa man dun. Sige lang, ako follow up ni Kathy, ha? Mo ba sultan ako ni bitaw? Sige, okay. Sige, okay, thank you. Sorry for the interruption, somebody was trying to collect something. And I had to pick up that phone call. So as you can see, Vic, it's in your Facebook page as well. It's in mine. So let's do this.
Game.
Shall we, guys? Hi, guys. Welcome to the Pilosopo podcast. I'm your host, Jiggy Jr., and I am with the Regional Director for Region 7 for LTO, Mr. Vic Kaindik.
Good afternoon, Jig.
Good afternoon. Vic, how's everything?
Couldn't be better.
Welcome to the Pilosopo podcast. I am glad that you were able to make it here in spite of your very busy schedule. First and foremost, as I always love to ask my guests, Vic, tell us, give us your educational, your spiritual, your family background that led us to this moment right here, right now, where you are now, sitting on the LTO director for regions as LTO director for Region 7. Give us your background, sir.
Well, before I answer, two things I want to share. Everyone in this world is given only one thing in equal measure, and that's time. It's 24 hours of a day, and no one, whether you were born rich or poor, would have more than 24 hours of your day. So that is something that I believe in, and which leads to the other thing I want to share. Fate never comes to us at the moment of our own choice. However, fate always favors the prepared. My grandparents used to have a farm in Basak. So my lolo is actually a farmer, but he had good education before he became a farmer, because prior to World War II, he was from Surigao, and he came from an well-educated family. My mom and her siblings are all professionals on the mother's side. My father's side is not from Cebu, and I have very little interaction with them. Although, if it's something worth to consider, my uncle is a diocesan priest that has been assigned in other places in the world, on the father's side. I grew up basically in a farm, And while I had Catholic education, my grandparents were Protestant, Seventh-day Adventist. So you could say that my my formative years, no, my concept of religion was somehow confused, to say the least.
Mm-hmm.
But I had a good balance of understanding because I mean, I was studying in a Catholic school for my elementary years. But my grandfather was also a pastor in the Seventh-day Adventist Church. So, you have to somehow, at a very young age, try to understand the different concepts that are presented to you in terms of religion. I studied high school in UP
Yeah.
where we were together in the same campus. And in the 4 years, religion went out the door.
That's absolutely correct.
Well, we were all trained for critical thinking, no? And a sense of independence in how we look at things in the world. I moved on to college also in UP Cebu, where I, for some brief moment, I was an activist.
Okay.
No? So I joined all those rallies going to the U.S. consulate.
Okay.
And I'm hoping they're not looking at this podcast because I still haven't had my U.S. visa ever since. No? Ever since. Not that I have any intentions to travel to the U.S. in the near future. I was part of LFS for some time until I joined my fraternity, which is a good friend of your fraternity that's celebrating tomorrow.
Yes, yes, yes. Which fraternity is this?
The UP Bellboys. No?
Oh, the Bellboys.
So we started all the rumbles
Are
in
you
UP.
being condescending when you say good friend? Because I hear
No, we're
we had
good friends.
scrimmages. Was
No,
that,
wala man.
wala
Tao
ba to?
and Bellboys never had problems.
okay.
It was the Latagaos that
The
had problems
Latagaos,
with
yeah,
the UP Bellboys.
yeah. I actually had the same question
Yeah.
that I asked Joel about the fraternity.
Oh, he's Latagao.
Yeah, that's why.
Yeah.
That's why.
So I was responsible for most of the rumbles there. I was primarily the cause. No? So I think in the 4 years I was there, 3 of the major rumbles, isa ko's mga nakaingon. And that closed down UP Cebu. So, yan ang mga tao diha. These people who think they know how to fight with me, they don't understand me very well yet. I spent my years in college struggling to make sure that I would graduate at the allocated period my mom gave me. So, you could say that it was the motivating factor for me to make sure that in whatever I do, I could be playing gangster with my brads, no? Or I could be out with whoever I wanted to be, no? Go out with friends. But it doesn't compromise the end in mind, and that is to graduate within the time frame. Because my mom had always maintained to us, no, in the family, if your course is good for 4 years,
Finish it in 4 years.
your budget is only 4 years. And I have the same principle which I share to my children today. It was a struggle when I started work, no, in my career. Though I was fortunate to be shaped in an environment in Mindanao where right after graduation...
So you moved to Mindanao.
I moved to Mindanao. But prior to that, I worked for an advertising agency. I worked for another UP graduate, Zen Pastoriza.
Oh, Zen, yeah.
Zen
Was
was
this
my
camp?
boss. Was this camp? Yeah, I was employee number 4, no?
Oh.
It was Zen.
Camp.
Yeah, camp. It was Zen, and then Vicky,
Vicky, yeah.
and then Inday, who passed away early this year, and then me, no? So I was employee number 4.
Oh, I didn't know that, Vic.
I was a working student,
Okay.
basically. The first half of my 4th year, I finished all the subjects that were available. I only had 2 or 3 subjects on my 4th year, second sem, so I had to work, no? And that shaped me in terms of being able to deliver quality work. Zen is a very good mentor as well. And, beyond the textbooks that you learn from school, Zen gave me real opportunities to do marketing work. I wrote copies, I wrote creative briefs for projects that were assigned to me. And then I moved to Mindanao to work for my father-in-law. We were basically extradited to that part of the Philippines.
So how long were you with camp, and then what was
Well,
your...
collectively about a year and a half.
Okay.
But
What was your business in Mindanao? What part of Mindanao is this, if you don't mind?
I was based in Davao for
Okay.
some time
Okay.
with my new family, and you would say that I'm an ahente, no, in the most basic sense of the term. But we managed the family business there, and that's how I met a lot of the people I know today. But also, it was an eye opener because a city kid like me that grew up my whole life in Cebu basically had to deal with the realities of doing business in Mindanao. So, traveling hours to get to one point to get rejected, no, with a possible business transaction that you're trying to close helps you to learn to be more discerning about the decisions you take in life. And then we moved back to Cebu, and let's just say that another part of that life, a new chapter opened, and that's how I started my career in the corporate world. No, so my first job was with Unilever Walls. So I handled the rollout of distribution for ice cream, basically, in Cebu. And I had the opportunity again to work with a very tough boss. No, the things when you work for somebody who has a very high and exacting standard of things, when you were still working for that guy, you would curse him to death, perhaps. No, but in hindsight, you realize that how he shaped you actually made you a better person today, and that's how I took my career. No, so I worked for Selecta, and then I moved to another company, an American company called Master Foods, the one that distributes chocolates, Mars, no, M&Ms. And then I got hired by Philips, no, because of my experience also in rolling out distribution systems across the Vismin region. It was a whirlwind career, to say the least, because in the 7 years, I moved from head of Vismin for one division to another, eventually training manager, and then national sales manager. And then I was appointed the youngest GM of Philips for its consumer lifestyle division. I think I was 32 or 33 when I was appointed as GM. So, the thing is, you get to see all sorts of things. No? You get to meet all sorts of people. But you had also very interesting experiences along the way. That part of my life is where you would say, I can't recall how many people I fired and how many business partners I separated ways with. But in the end, what I learned is that you just have to set your sights on a goal, and that's how you do things. Everything else will fall into place.
So how did it lead you to being an LTO
All right.
regional director?
Didn't answer the question there, no? And that's interesting.
That's the most important part.
Sa kataas ba, sa istorya? Well, like they say, no, fate does not come to you at the moment of your own choice. The people I met in Davao,
Okay,
no,
all right.
when I moved there, and the subsequent events that led me to where I am today, was partly because of my experience in Davao. I met people there who became good friends of mine, who were involved in the campaign for President Duterte's presidency. In the early part, we were one of the very few and the bold and the brave who believed that maybe this guy can still become president when the survey says he's only 8%. No, I was with Secretary Michael Dino and Assistant Secretary John G. Gonzalez in the campaign, but not actively, although I was the vice president for PDP Laban in the Visayas during the campaign of President Duterte. I didn't really want to work for government because at the time I was still employed with a company called Hilti, a Swiss-German engineering solutions company, and I headed Vismin. One thing led to another, and the appointment came out, and so here I am. And well, I did tell them.
But you had prior experience with traffic.
I was
right?
with CITOM.
You were at CITOM years ago, right?
I was with CITOM. I was in the board. On record, I'm the shortest serving executive director of CTOM, 6 weeks to be specific.
Yeah. What happened to that? That's actually a very interesting
Well,
part of your career, because
then
we were pretty excited that you were at the helm of CTOM in Cebu. What year was this again, sir?
2014.
2014.
December.
And you ruffled a lot of feathers. It was a very there were so many changes in the Bantal traffic rules, and we were very excited about
I
the
don't
changes.
know if
What happened?
Then Mayor, but
Ta-
now Vice Mayor Mike Rama
Yeah.
will still recall. But I was
What happened
with
to
him.
that?
I was with him in having dinner in one place here, and that club, the exclusive club near your office here. No? And I was late for dinner with my wife, and when I arrived, he said, you should never be late for a meeting with the mayor of Cebu. I said, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, but the traffic in your city is very horrible. And he looked at me, couldn't believe that I would say something like that. But we were good friends, no? I said, you think you can do anything about the traffic here? We're doing what we can. I said, oh, you give me 6 weeks, I'll tell you how to do it. So me and my big mouth, no, that's how it happened. But I was already I already signed my employment contract with Hilti.
Okay.
And I was in Singapore. I signed the contract, went home to Cebu, and he said, you meet me in my office. And he had a whole press corps already there. And then he said, oh, this is the new chief of traffic. And of course, I couldn't,
So you didn't know that you were going to be appointed as
Well,
traffic
the discussion was moving between
czar?
different time zones. No? So early into 2014, he said, we'll put you there, we'll put you there. But I was with the board. I was one of the noisiest members of the board at the time.
board of
Board of CTOM.
CTOM. Okay.
So the appointment came at the time when I was already about to take on a new role.
In another company.
In another company, yeah.
So what was that the reason why your term there was sort of
No,
very short,
I
very
did
brief?
tell him, I'm not going to refuse your appointment.
So the 6 weeks was the 6 weeks that you promised. Is that?
Yes, because I said I'll fix it in 6 weeks. We did Bantal. We did Bantal as an
Yeah,
experimental
but your
zone.
changes, your experiment were not pursued after that. What happened was they slowly reverted back to the position before the changes were implemented. What happened to that?
I'm not gonna judge the decisions of people who took over the helm of CTOM after I left.
Okay.
But one thing that many people don't realize up to this day is that I'm Cebuano.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in Cebu, no? I grew up in Cebu. I lived my entire life in Cebu. Although I've been around, no? I've spent time being in Mindanao. I've spent time being in Manila. When I worked in Manila, I was married on weekends and a bachelor on weekdays.
Mm-hmm.
So I fly there every week, no? And fly back home. So I had the best of both worlds. No? I'm not admitting to anything though. But what I'm saying is that I'm from here. No, my family is here. I live here. I gave up a very nice career because I really wanted to go home and be in Cebu. I perhaps should have considered other bigger positions than LTO, and but I think that if I were going to serve in government, I'd rather serve government being here in Cebu. And that means that there's something I can contribute to the place that I live in. I grew up here, no? Kanang when you wake up very early, going to school, I had to take 2 rides going to UP. I live in the south.
Okay.
So I have to take 2 rides. So the struggle is real, no?
The struggle is real.
The struggle is real.
So now you're the LTO Region 7 the director for, of course, Region 7. Everybody's talking about the traffic problem that we have here in Cebu City. Everybody's complaining about it. I am a part-time DJ, part-time podcaster, full-time driver. I spend more time driving more than anything else on a daily basis to pick up the kids and all that stuff. Everybody's talking about and comparing the traffic situation in Cebu, in the Philippines, for that matter. They always compare it to other parts of the world. Let's say the United States. Let's just say New York, for example, in the United States, or Singapore, or some other parts of the world. What is the Philippine driving experience, you think, especially Cebu City driving experience, that is unique to us? That's not common or not obvious in some parts of the world. What do you think is the Philippine driving experience? the Cebu City driving
the
experience.
Philippine driving experience is self-inflicted pain.
Okay.
You know, I lived in Manila for 4 years, like I said, and there was a time, or at least a point in time, when Cebu traffic was much better than being in Manila. We would always joke that because my office was in Makati, no, and I had office mates going to Quezon City. On weekends, they would ask me why I would go home to Cebu every week, and I said, it's faster for me to drive from Makati to the airport and then take the flight to Cebu. I'd be home much faster than you, than going to Quezon City, no, or going to Alabang.
And you're not just trying to be funny. It's true, right?
It's a fact, no. But today you cannot say the same thing of Cebu.
Self-inflicted. What do you mean, sir? How are we different from
Because we had
from the
been-
Singaporean, from the Japanese, from the New Yorker?
We had been complacent, no, as a citizen. We elected the wrong people or stupid ones to where they are, and yet we expect that we would get better results from them. I mean, come on. You've seen all the officials that have been here for some time. They've been there for what, 20 years, 30 years? I'm not talking about the guy that just lost. I'm still talking about the guys that are still there. Right? We had a master plan for Cebu. It's called MCDP2. Maklat study that said, in 20 years, Cebu, if you don't do anything, will become a horrible place to live in. It talked about the road networks that need to be fixed, the transport system that has to be in place, the drainage systems, the places that we need to develop next, no?
How long
Mega
ago?
Cebu.
How long ago was this study?
20 years.
20 years
25
ago.
years
Okay.
ago. No? We ignored it. And if my memory serves me right, when I was still in CITOM, no, as a board member, we did an audit of the Maklat's recommendations for traffic in Metro Cebu, and I think out of
What's the Maklats? What's that? Is that a foreign company? Sounds foreign to me.
It's an acronym, no?
Okay.
Metro Cebu Land Use and Transport System, something.
So the government funded that. The national
Yes.
government funded the study.
Consultants did that, no?
Okay.
Experts did that. And they said, in 20 years, if you don't do all these things, you will be in a mess.
So
And
the study was presented to the local government, to the
local
mayors
stakeholders,
of
yeah.
that time.
Yeah. Even the congressmen
So what
who are still here today.
what was their reaction to the study?
No,
Why wasn't there any action made?
If I'm not mistaken, out of the 21 points that were presented as essential interventions, only 3 or 4 were done.
Okay.
I can't recall which exactly. But the point is, there were studies that were made in the past where we spent money on, for consultants to tell us that we will be in this mess. Why self-inflicted? Because we don't ask for accountability from our public officials. Mega Cebu has been there for quite some time, and they have been trying to push for a lot of interventions from government. That never happens, no? RDC had been trying to put funding for a lot of things that never happened, no? Now, of course, people can always say, we didn't get the funds or this or that. But how come we got funding for a 720 million overpriced canal? Which is what I call the Mumbling or overpass. I mean, underpass there. It's a 720 million, 800 million canal.
Yes.
It's 720 meters, so that's 1 million per meter. We can afford to spend that much money on a canal. Whoever proposed that, no? I am sure will tell you that it was supposed to be a billion more, no?
Okay.
It's a billion something project because it was supposed to be a water impounding system. That's why I call it a canal, but they modified it. We had 6 lanes, now we have 4. Right? You spent that much money, no? You spend that much money to put in a canal. And the funny thing is, I just said in one of my interviews, you should sue the contractor. Why? Because we spent for a canal, but the water is not in the canal, it's in the upper part of that underpass. And it's so sad. The people living around the area have to deal with that problem, no? Every time it rains. And I said,
building something as expensive as 800 million, you mentioned, this so-called canal in Mumbling, takes a lot of coordination and involves a lot of people, right?
Money talks.
How come nobody was outraged enough
Money talks
to stop, to
like
to block,
my best friend broadcaster, he doesn't talk about the Mumbling Canal. Why? I mean, why is there no outrage for a
Yeah,
project
exactly.
of that
That
nature?
was the word that I was looking. Why was there nobody
You're
outraged
trying
about
to
it?
fix one intersection with 720 million. Diba? Pardon my French, but fuck you, man. 720 million to fix one intersection. You know how much it costs now to fix all the traffic lights? And I think, I'm meeting later the city administrator, but you know how much they quoted to fix all the traffic lights? 500 something million. You spent 720 million to fix traffic in one intersection. But you did not address the 500 something million that would have fixed 87 critical intersections in the entire Metro Cebu area. 25 years ago, we had the best traffic light system in the entire country.
25 years ago.
That was my thesis in high school. That's why I know that very well.
Okay.
I interviewed Ricky Zolayvar and the late Sami Darza. And they talked about how smart our system was. But you know how sad, no? And that's why I said self-inflicted. You keep electing the wrong people. Did you know that our traffic system today is controlled by a room this big inside the city hospital?
City Hospital.
Yes. The one that's being used as a temporary CCMC, which used to be the old CTOM building. If you enter that in the lobby on the left side, that's where all the relays are. Now, what's interesting, that entire mainframe, as people call it now, can actually be superseded by a phone like this. No, you had a quad-core phone, could control the entire system.
You can override it and control it on your
But
phone.
we still have to maintain that entire room of magnetic relays and old switchboards, when you could have just already upgraded it with this phone is much powerful than that computer there.
The entire room of computers.
We're paying for leased lines to have the hard wires connected to each of the intersections. We don't have sensors anymore, bye.
Let me just backtrack a little bit because I'm still baffled by the 800 million peso project in Mumbling that you call a canal, a very expensive canal. That's a huge ass amount, 800 million, 720 million to be exact. It must have been on the tables of many individuals, many people. And you mentioned money talks, right? Was there no way of stopping that? And if not, if you could not stop that particular project, obviously we were not able to stop it. How can we not make the same mistake of doing useless projects, especially about the traffic situation in Cebu, and spending so much when we could have allocated the amount for something more important?
The rebel in me would have, well, to be honest with you, I was at DPWH together with RDC Chairman Cobonpe.
Okay.
And Glenn Soco, who is now Provincial Board, who is our IDC Chairman for RDC, the Infrastructure Committee. And we voiced our concern to the then DPWH Director together with the USEC for Visayas. And we said, why do you have to proceed with that? The feasibility study says that you should widen the roads first before you implement that project. Of course, they had technical reasons to proceed with it. And while we may understand that those are the reasons why they have to proceed with it, the sensible thing...
What was their logic behind the project?
Because it was already awarded.
No, but aside from that, in terms of easing the traffic congestion, what was their logic?
Well, when you build flyovers, you spend 280 million for the same intersection. And they said, Mike Rama doesn't like flyovers. But the proponent is Mike Rama's enemy. So they said, okay, since we can't have our 3 flyovers, let's just have one underpass and price it for 3 flyovers.
Oh my God, really? That was the kind of conversation that they were having?
No, that's what I thought they were having. And it's exclusively my opinion.
But in terms of easing...
But whether my opinion made sense to you or not, you can just...
It looks like it made sense. It makes sense. But what was their logic in decongesting the traffic and building that Mumbling, what do you call, underpass?
Well, the thing is...
What was their logic? What did they tell...
We gave these people 3 terms.
Okay.
So whether their logic was right or wrong, we validated it by electing these people. I mean...
How's the traffic situation in Mumbling now? Is it better?
It's not in Mumbling anymore. The traffic is in Pardo.
In Pardo, okay.
So you just move the traffic from one place to another. So maybe they'll do another Pardo underpass. And hopefully it will move to Bulacan and then they'll make a new river out of Mananga. so that it will move to Mananga. But my point is, that is not the solution, right? You talked about traffic. I'm not the traffic expert, but I have my experience along those things. My corporate background trains me to understand problems, um, understanding complexity, and finding simpler solutions to things, and optimizing systems that are in place.
But this whole political system we have here in the Philippines is complex, and it's so many moving parts and so many people you have to deal with. In fact,
Yeah.
that's in politics. It's an art, right? You need to be able to make sure that
I'm learning along the way, yes.
compromise a lot of your decisions, your ideals, to be able to get something done, right?
In the corporate
It's
world,
different. It's different.
In the corporate world, there is a specific leadership competency, they call it.
Yeah. We don't-
Navigating organizational complexities. No, that's a fancy term for it. In other words, you cut through the bullshit and try to understand.
How do you
which is
apply that in
important.
Philippine politics?
I mean, if we have elections every 3 years, you cannot. Simply, you cannot.
So
The guys
are
with
you
good
hopeless? Are
intention-
you hopeless about a solution for the traffic situation here in Cebu?
You know why I like Duterte as a president? He advocates a revolutionary government. Yeah. I'm not saying that we should go take the option of a civil war. But when things are not going our way now, and we blame people in government, the first question you ask, how much will it take to become an elected official? If you have a good answer for that,
A lot
you
of
will-
money.
Exactly. And where do you get money? Where do the guys with the right brains like me, how do I get elected? That's why
Accumulate as much money as I can.
Exactly. That's why the former mayor said, you know, that guy, he is just appointed, not erected. I said, I have better erections than you fucking idiot. Diba? I mean, away naman lang hindi mo gusto. Away mo kagbugoy, pasensya na. But my point is, the complexity of things, no matter how we try to digest the issue, is very simple. People need to be elected to do things. Because if you're just appointed like me, you can only do so much. But the elected ones, they're the ones that are supposed to define how the future will look like. Me, for example, I don't craft policy, I don't craft law. I implement it. I implement what is written. And some of those written may be as idiotic and stupid as it may sound, but they have been implemented, or at least written down for implementation. So when a law is written, we take it as it is and we implement it. When people say you're being stupid when you do this and do that, I said, you know, di ba na namusala?
You know,
We're
the
just
thing
being
with Philippine politics, especially local politics, is like you said, the term of a mayor is only three
years.
years, right? And then you have to have another election. And once the sitting mayor loses, the incoming mayor, the incoming team, sort of like drops every single project of the previous and then starts anew, right? So it's like a constant beginning every 3 or so years. How do you solve that? Should there be a law?
Why are we losing out on, for example, no, talking about Cebu City, why are we losing out on Mandaue or even Lapu-Lapu? Because Mandaue and Lapu-Lapu, they have unified politics. Why is Cebu losing out on projects against other provinces? No? I used to briefly work for Speaker Alvarez as a consultant. No? And I realized that some districts were taking billions in terms of projects in their localities. And I asked the people around the speaker, and they said, you know, the problem with Cebu, well, at least when Alvarez was still speaker, and that was still the time when different politicians were sitting in the roles that they were sitting in. They said, you know, the problem with Cebu is you put money there, you cannot spend it. Because the politicians are always bickering. You're always fighting. So if you put money there, and because government has limited resources, we allocate it in areas that can use it right away. So when Tagum, for example, or Bukidnon got 1 billion, one congressman here got what? 300 million, 200 million. The most, I think, was 600 million. And that was because we were not unified. I'm hoping for better days for Metro Cebu because our governor, our mayor, the mayors of the cities are
Unified
at least,
in a way.
friends, no
Okay.
friends, at the very least friends.
So that 25 years ago project that you mentioned, are we anywhere? Are we going to restart that project or that program? And what is the solution now, moving forward? Because we have so many solutions, so many versions of
yeah.
a solution to the traffic situation. Maybe you can divide it into two solutions: the short term and the long term. Start with the short term.
Let's
sir.
just talk about where I am from, no?
Okay.
The department that I belong to,
Okay.
which is the Department of Transportation. Secretary Tugade and Secretary Michael Dino, who represents the Office of the President for Visayas, are one in the agreement that instead of just a BRT project, what should be done for Cebu is an integrated intermodal system. And that system will consist of a high-capacity, high-speed line,
Okay.
a high-capacity, low-speed system, which is your bus line,
Okay.
and then, of course, your aerial ropeways to serve the highlands, and an airport line that will bring people from our airport to the city. Conceptually speaking, what Secretary Tugade gave us an order is to complete or at least have partial operability by 2021. That means to say that if we're having a BRT, that parts of it will run by 2021. And if a rail project is in the pipeline, that the proponents would have a definite line. No? What is the first step to that? The approval of an alignment. Meaning to say, the master plan for where the rail will be, where the bus will be, where the aerial ropeway will be, and where the airport line will be approved. And Secretary Tugade and Secretary Dino already agreed on that line. And they approved it already. Secretary Tugade, to be specific. Why is that significant? Because contrary to the lies being peddled by some of the politicians, then they said, oh, BRT was there for 10 years or whatever. It never had an approved line from the DOTR. So the alignment and the approval of the alignment of our IITS is in place. And that will now give a signal to the consultants to start creating the technical specifications so you can bid out the project. Meaning to say, sige, you want to do a BRT? Ipabid ko na og proponent. The proponent cannot do anything without the technical specifications. And the role of the consultant is to build that specification today so that it can be bidded out already.
Are we there already? Have we built?
They're starting already on the technical descriptions
Okay.
of the project, the technical aspect, so that DOTR can now bid out that project. Much like when we had this new airport terminal. The new airport terminal, for it to be bidded out, nasa to siya yung technical descriptions, etc., etc. Muto yung mong ipabid. You cannot just say, oh, bid out BRT. What am I bidding for? BRT, kanang BRT ba? Unsam na BRT nimo? Asam na mo agi, pilam na ka terminal, etc.
So wala pa kita nagsugod na sir in terms of the project, the BRT
They're
project.
already on the process of
The
finalizing
paperwork.
the paperwork,
Okay.
so that it can be bidded out.
In the
already
meantime,
by
in the
DOTR.
meantime, we're still suffering from huge traffic jams every almost
Yeah,
single day, right?
Yeah.
And
just listen to Y101.
this is what I hear all the time. All the time ato ako nung mga tao ko no, disiplina kanang pataka lang og parking, etc., etc. And I mentioned this. I had this conversation with Councilor Joel Garganero last week. Ingon ko niya nga, well, the problem with discipline is that you don't expect people to be disciplined overnight. And I think one of the things to make a disciplined people is to implement the laws consistently. So, for example, kung mag-clamp mo ng adlaw o mag-clamp mo ng simanaha, ayo undang pang-clamp para maanal sila. Paghuman, once they're used to clamping in that area, they will never ever park ever again. And I was asking him, well, what's my problema? Why don't we have enough traffic enforcers to enforce the laws? Is there enough people in that department? Ingon ko nga, kung maklampa na ang auto, naman ay penalty, naman ay fine. So the more violators, the more money you have in your war chest to employ more traffic enforcers. So is it correct, sir, in saying we have not really fully implemented the traffic laws here in Cebu City?
Ang imong pagkadagayo, pinigawas. Meaning to say, you're being very idealistic. A lot of dynamics take place, Manggod, no? One of the things I learned when I was with Sitom is that you get calls from everybody. And sometimes the calls you make are from the people you least expect to call you. That's one. The other side of it is something they teach us early in management. No? If you have IE or industrial engineering students now, a lot of them will tell you that model can be defined in the fishbone diagrams. No?
Fishbone diagram. What's a
It's called
fishbone
a
diagram?
fishbone diagram. You know,
Itsura ng fishbone diagram.
kanang process of continuous improvement
Okay.
and what you call change management. The Japanese nag-senior moment ko, I'm Kamugawa fishbone diagram, I think,
Okay.
if I'm not mistaken. Basta hapon.
Okay. Anyway,
Kaya ko isda na siya.
so are we enforcing
But the fishbone
the laws here
diagram, the
properly?
fishbone diagram tells you that if you want to change something, no, for continuous improvement, you need people, process, systems, environment, and man, method, machinery, etc. There's 4 or 5 elements there. The problem with enforcement is that if you just look at enforcement per se, you get to ignore the other factors.
Which are?
For example, why do people park?
Why do people park?
Why do people park?
Improperly, you mean?
Wherever. I mean, why do people park their cars?
Because there's no space for parking.
There's no space for parking.
From
Saan na
like,
siya?
sa building,
Unsa pa?
the buildings did not have enough parking spaces to begin with. Yeah, for
Okay.
example.
But
Yeah.
the building code says that you need to have parking.
Yeah,
Right?
correct. Oh.
Unsa pa yung reason? I mean,
Didali sila.
Didali.
Oh.
So discipline.
Oh.
Unsa pa? So many other things.
Okay.
But there's a lot of factors to say that the parking there could be justified by whoever did it.
Yeah.
Ang ilang rason nganong ang LTO gitagaan og rehistro niya walay parking area, di wala may balaod. Okay. Mean sila na may no parking niya, giparkingan gyud. Pulpul man tong tawhana. So many reasons, but the question is how do you prevent parking? Right? So you say you consistently clamp, etc., etc., etc. Daghang kay na siya. But people forget the issue. Why do we not allow them to park? Why?
In the first place.
In the first place.
Why don't we allow them to park in the area? Because
Yeah.
it will congest the traffic.
Why is traffic there congested?
Because people park in that area.
Is that entirely correct? Because I could always argue that maybe we should have rerouted our roads already.
That's not entirely correct, but it contributes to the traffic in the area.
Yeah, but what if there is no parking space? Like this building has a legacy issue. This building was built at a time when the code does not still require a building to have parking. Do we blame the occupants of this building to bring their cars? Do we tell them not to bring their cars? Because the next question I will ask, so how will they move from their homes to their workplace?
You know, if for example, let's have a thought experiment. For example, this building was built in a time when there was no requirement for parking space, so they're not allowed.
It's not their fault.
It's not their fault, and they cannot bring their cars because they have no parking spots.
But why would you prevent them from not bringing their cars?
No, because that's the law. So let's just have a thought experiment here. So we implement that law to its fullest, so they can never ever.
So no one will come here anymore.
In a car. So
In a car.
Nobody
but
will
how
come.
will they come here next?
There are a myriad of ways to come here.
Habal-habal sila.
Maghabal,
Then mo reklamo
magangkas,
ta that there will be so many habal-habals.
or mag-grab sila,
They're
or
going
whatever.
to go grab and then they're going to complain that grab is expensive.
Yeah, but let's just say we will just implement that law. So
Exactly.
at the end of the day, they will be disciplined enough to know, that that's I cannot do anything
I'm
about
not
that
arguing
anymore.
with you are correct. But what I'm saying is that is one paradigm.
Yeah.
But if we shift our paradigm and we ask the question, so why are we not allowing people to park? Why do we have to make it illegal? Because it's going to constrict the roads?
Yeah.
My next question is, how many roads are we actually utilizing properly?
I don't know the answer to
I
that.
mean, yeah, because we ask the wrong questions. The question that we should always ask our leaders now is, how are you addressing our mobility issues? As a resident, as a citizen, as a taxpayer of this place, you in government, what are you doing to fix and address our mobility concern? What is mobility? Mobility is when people move from their house to their workplace, to where they study, where they commune, and back.
Okay.
That is the simplest concept. Di man gyud na mahitabo nga nigawas kasi Mumbai di ka muli. Unless nga na kay kabit, then you go to another house. Right? But the point is, when you live here, you go here to work and do other things, but you still go home. So, do we even study? How many people actually live where? When you talk about habal-habals being pesky, how are we going to address the 10,000 people or so who rely on habal-habals to get home, to get to their office on time, to get to their workplace, to get to their schools? Because
Vic, when you consider all of these things, I think we will suffer from paralysis by over-analysis, right?
We will not suffer from paralysis.
Because there's so many moving parts in this in this problem, and if we consider all of these voices, we will not be able to do anything,
but,
right?
I should be the first guy to tell you enforcement is key.
Yeah.
Because I'm the chief enforcement officer.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But I don't subscribe to enforcement.
Okay.
Last year, we arrested, in the same period of January to July, over 6,000, 7,000 people. This year, in the same period, we issued apprehensions over 18,000 or 19,000. Same period. 3 or 4 times more. Are you seeing less traffic? No.
Where are they back in the streets? No. Those 18,000 arrests?
They got arrested.
Okay.
They got fined. They paid very hefty sums. But my question to you is, are we in a place with less traffic or no?
Same.
Are we in a place where people are better disciplined or not? Because we are not changing our paradigm. The way I see it, if you really want to address the problem, you address it at the core. Where do people live and where do people go to? Obviously, people work, people go to school, right? So, for us to be able to analyze this best, the first thing is to get experts to work in local government units. But what is the problem? We are not hiring experts, we're hiring political appointees. That's one. Number two, the people who know better are still job order employees. Some have been fired because they voted for the other guy that's lost, right? So, if we are committed to fixing traffic as an issue, our local government units must now look at seriously getting the right people in place. In the corporate world, we call it hire first the competent ones. Why? Because in all of this, people fix problems, not systems, not machines. At the very core, you have people. Then people who will run the machines, define the systems, and recreate the environment. So at the very core of it is people. The question is, what are our people decisions at this point in time when we talk about local governments? You ask me how I came here. I came here because my friend, who was the speaker then, said, buang-buang ka man di ay. You campaign for the president and now you need to help this government do something and di ka musud. So I said, are you sure you want me there? Because I'm going to ruffle a lot of feathers and a lot of people will be very, very, very pissed at me because I'm the guy that comes from the corporate world.
Exactly, that's what I was saying.
So I'm the guy that fired more than a dozen people.
You're the corporate guy. Your mold is from the corporations that you have worked with, and then you try to implement all those ideas that you have from the corporate world into the political world, which are worlds apart. Aren't you scared, Vic, that you can never fit a square in a round hole?
Well,
and you're going to be working so hard to make that fit, and when in fact that'll never happen.
Let me borrow a term you used earlier. I may sound condescending,
okay,
but I couldn't give a fuck about what everybody thinks.
Okay.
I got hired to do a job, right? And if they no longer think I'm fit to do the job, then okay. First, I've always considered myself a job order employee. I'm a presidential appointee. The president signed my appointment papers. That means to say the president at any time can fire me out. I have no intentions of taking the civil service or career executive service examinations. And I said, when the president is no longer there, I will no longer be in government. But if by some stroke of bad luck, he says, this guy is an idiot, fire him. Kay Bobby Nalsaro said he's arrogant. No?
Which we'll talk about later on.
Ay, Bobby who?
Bobby Nalzaro.
Oh, that guy.
That guy. We'll talk about that later.
I mean, idiots like him
Okay.
don't like me.
Okay.
Why? Because an idiot like Bobby Nalsaro thinks I'm a round hole.
Exactly.
But he doesn't realize I'm the square peg. I come from an environment and a culture that says, I don't fucking care about your popularity. I only care about whether you can deliver or not. And that is the reason why, perhaps, no, on the day I left Philips, everybody celebrated. Because I'm the guy that kicks out those who doesn't deliver. And I don't care if you cry in front of me. I mean, because I got paid to do a job.
Okay.
And perhaps a lot of people don't understand that. But the culture I come from is that, no? Philips is a Dutch company. Selecta was Unilever, which is also a Dutch company.
And Philippine politics is definitely not a Dutch company. So what I'm trying to say here is you have to surround yourself with like-minded people, right? You have to surround yourself with similar principles like you. Are you hopeful that you can surround yourself with a team that can realistically implement those ideas that you have?
Let me tell you about LTO today. No? For all the many accomplishments we've done, for all the improvements we've done in our offices, for the arrests and apprehensions we have made, including to our own people, if you experience a better environment transacting with LTO 7 today, all of these things I've only done because I never brought in someone from outside. I did not bring in a single employee from outside on the day I joined LTO. So all of these accomplishments that people talk about, at least the smart ones, huh, that can recognize that there's already a positive difference, all of these are accomplished by the very same people that people said were idiots and incompetent. In other words, no one can say that whatever change we did in LTO was because we brought in people from outside. They're all from inside.
So you're able to accomplish it using the same resources,
Yes.
human resources.
But there's one thing I promised my people in LTO, the people I work with today. I
Which
said,
was?
I will keep you out of politics, but you commit to me that you will do your job properly. In other words, when there is political pressure from outside, I take it. Not my people, not the people in LTO. So they can now do their jobs properly. And the ones that don't listen are the ones that got arrested by NBI. Diba?
Okay.
Because we said, look, there are a set of rules. I understand the law of process. That's what Maxwell said, no? His book, The Law of Process. And it's a long process to take. But in a law of process, if you want to make things change, you start with people lagi. And you may start with the right people or the wrong people, but you cannot go wrong with the direction. And our direction was very simple. We said, look, I'm not going to talk about big buildings or nicer facilities. I'm just going to talk to you about three concepts I want while I am your regional director. We want better frontline services. We want systems to be consistent. And three, there are transparencies that we will initiate, and people here will have a chance to prove themselves. We are filling up positions, 87 positions in LTO today. You know, we were able to submit, after 6 long years of delay, the Strategic Performance Management Scorecard of LTO. 6 long years, they couldn't do it. So ni Pakpak in town, the civil service people were so happy that LTO 7 finally was able to submit its scorecard. But the journey was not overnight, no? It took a lot of, you know, dancing, shaping, negotiations. The changes are not yet absolute. But what I can tell you is that we have a much better organization today than what we had probably a year and a half ago.
That it means that it's quicker to get a driver's license in plastic and stuff like
in
that.
the frontline service aspect, no? If you go to SMC side LTO, licensing office, you will notice that it is a much better place to transact and do business than when you were in N. Bacalso. But if you happen to be going to N. Bacalso today, you will also realize that even there, the transactions are so much better now. You have more comfortable spaces. We have opened new office locations. You know, Island Central Mall in Mactan. We have Alturas Mall. We opened Santa Fe. We opened Camotes just recently. All in all, between July and December of this year, we are opening 12 new additional offices. So from the 16 offices that I had, no, and when I joined LTO in January of 2018, by December of this year, we would have 28 offices.
Additional.
What does that mean?
Or 16 more, you mean?
Well, 12 more, 16 plus 12 becomes 28, right? If we're lucky, it will get to 30 by the end of the year. But what does all of this mean? All of this means that if you take an index of transactions in LTO in January 2019, you have total transactions divided by your number of offices, you have a significantly lower ratio of people transacting in 28 offices over the same number of transactions. So, for example, mga 180 per transaction ng usa ka office, karon siguro ang index nasa mga 100 na lang. Now, that is what you call fixing the problem from the very core. Why? Because LTO offices have never been improved significantly because of our budgets. We could never open so many offices because we don't have budgets for that also. And there's a lot of political dynamics involved in doing that. So, by spreading out our services, you reduce the opportunity for people, no, to crowd up in a place. But what is the consequence? It means a lot of people that used to do business around LTO are going to be extremely pissed at you.
Meaning to say the medical checkups and all that stuff, right?
Of course, everybody that sold insurance in the proximities of LTO, everybody that did medical checkups, they'll be very pissed at you. Because they used to fight for 180 customers, now they're down to 90 or 100 na lang. They lost 80 customers. Income-wise, they probably lost about 40% of what they make. Right? So, it's all about the numbers, but it's all driven by a very simple principle.
Your purpose, right?
Yeah. Improve frontline services. In Bohol, for example, you know, we have an LTO e-patrol bus. Our e-patrol bus, we launched it in February. Between February and today, we went to 37 municipalities and served 12,000 individuals. That's 6 months, by 12,000 individuals. 37 municipalities. We're talking about municipalities in the mountains. We went to Canlaon. We went to places in Bohol like Carmen, no? Places that are not reached by our services in the past. When I joined, one of the worst reports I got was that people slept outside of our office to get a student permit and they get charged 3,000. In Bohol, you're lucky to get a license. Huh? You're lucky to get a license lining up, walay fixer, in 2 weeks.
Wow. So in
Why?
Cebu,
Because the entire Bohol bay, only one office of LTO was issuing new licenses.
So in Cebu, if I went to SM Seaside City Cebu today, when will I get my license if I had it renewed?
You're gonna get it the same day.
Same day.
If you went to Robinson's Fuente now, you'll get your plastic in 20 minutes.
In 20 minutes.
Assuming that dili puno og tao. But that's for renewals.
Okay.
So new licenses are available in SMC side, J Center
So
Mall.
how long is that process, would you say?
3 to 4 hours.
Really? So on the same day
but
you will...
not so bad,
Okay.
considering that it's good for 5 years.
Yes.
And when you renew your license, you can
Okay.
renew it in any LTO office nationwide.
Mm-hmm.
So, there are steps that we're taking to
I think
fix
Vic,
the problem.
I think I just realized the LTO part, the licenses issuance is actually can also be part of the solution to this whole traffic mess, right?
Oh yes, I'll tell you why. I'm cutting to the chase.
Okay.
Versus last year, our license issuance has dropped by negative 12%. That means to say we have become stricter in issuing new licenses.
Okay. Okay.
It dropped by negative 12%.
Negative 12%. Okay.
Ang bangortahe di malipay ana.
So yeah, so you have to be more stringent with your
And our compliance
approval,
ratio has increased.
approval, right?
Yeah, our compliance ratio has increased. What is compliance ratio? It means that if you registered your vehicle and the time for it to be re-registered has come, you comply on time. It has increased. Your license, if it expired, that you're renewing it on time. We are in a much higher compliance ratio now.
Why is
than
that?
last
Why,
year.
why is that? Have you implemented higher fees?
Two things. No, not the fees. Two things. Number one, we improved the frontline service. So
Okay.
you're
Okay.
able to deal with our offices in a more comfortable manner, no? But second, we also increased apprehensions. Again, it increased by 300%. So when you do all the math together, our revenues are increasing by almost 12% year to date. We are one of the highest growing regions in terms of revenue growth. Our apprehensions grew by 300%. Our license issuance dropped by negative 12%.
You know, Vic, what it looks like you're doing a lot of things, and you're doing it very well, especially with the LTO office in the front line and the experience of getting a license. But still, traffic persists in Cebu. I know there's a long-term, big-picture solution that you proposed, and it looks very daunting. It looks like it can solve the problem. You mentioned that there was a study 25 years ago that was never implemented, that should have been implemented. Maybe we can restart the implementation of such ambitious project. But in the meantime, we're still suffering from traffic in Cebu City especially, and in the neighboring cities like Mandaue. There are certain things that we can do right now, today. I mentioned earlier the clearing of the highways, the clamping of all of these cars, the consistency in which we enforce the laws. What else are we doing, Vic, to improve our traffic situation now? And while we do the short term, of course, have our hand on the long term as well. Like you mentioned,
Yeah.
you're already in the drawing board when it comes to the long-term solution, right? So give us the short-term solution that we are doing right now.
First, I want to do a disclaimer. No?
Okay.
I'm not the traffic management guy.
Okay.
That was the time when I was with CTOM.
Yeah,
Now
okay.
I'm with LTO. We are primarily tasked to do three things: issue licenses, issue registrations, and enforce traffic laws.
Okay. So that's where you come in.
Yeah, numbers wise, I don't think anyone can challenge me in terms of what I have done.
Okay.
Considering that we have a 300% increase in apprehension rates. Again, our compliance rates are high. But I'm not a believer in apprehensions. I believe in what you call logical and practical solutions to traffic. So what is it that we have proposed so far? No? LTO, me being the regional director, and working with other agencies, we have already sent a letter to the Office of the President through the Presidential Assistant for Visayas, proposing for dedicated motorcycle lanes on N. Bacalso and SRP. And we hope that will be discussed with DPWH and the local government units, and hoping that they will support that proposal so that the motorcycles will have their own lane to themselves and they will not cut into the lanes of regular vehicles. No? Of course, there's other issues like what if the jeeps will have to alight passengers or pick up passengers. I said, they can just reactivate their jeepney stops, and that will further put in some discipline. So, very little things that have big impacts. When you were still in high school, and you were older than me in high school, I'm sure you can recall the time that we had jeepney stops. No? In UP, di ba?
Yeah.
You cannot just
In
stop
front,
anywhere.
Abangan
Dili
sa
ka
school.
kahunong.
I remember this in front of the
So,
school.
why are we not restoring the jeepney stop system? Because the jeepney stop system puts order into how public vehicles move within the
But isn't
road
there a
network.
jeepney stop area everywhere?
Wala.
I see a jeepney stop sign.
Ang sign na
But it was never.
ang sign na lang na
So that was. It's no longer a law.
No, no. It never got repealed. It never got cancelled. Ang sign nalay na.
Okay, the implementation wala na.
Wala na. You cannot even see road markings anymore, di ba?
It used to be
When
like
I was with Sitom,
yellow rectangle, right?
Yeah, when I was with Sitom, the first thing I asked the mayor was, can you give me paint? I need 100 cans of paint. He said, what I budget?
Pintal ra.
Asa man kumangita ng pintal? Asa man choke ako ibutang diha? I mean, so simple things, no? Remark and restore the jeepney stops. Reorient the drivers. If you drive in Cebu City, a public utility vehicle, you must have a CTOM ID. No one is checking CTOM IDs. If you have a CTOM ID, it means to say that you are familiar with all the jeepney stops designated to the route that you are driving. So ano wala man nag-implement? And then the next thing you will hear is, awa mo gud mi kay bawa na, buang. Ay mo lingkod-lingkod din di mo ka mao. You don't take that responsibility without realizing that that responsibility is great.
So of all the things that we are doing na mga ginagmay nga atong kipangbuhat, Vic, katong mga clearing of the highways, the apprehensions, maybe the jeepney stops, the restoration of jeepney stops, and you mentioned the lane for the motorcycles. What is your prognosis? What do you think is going to happen once all of these things that you mentioned will be implemented? Do you think that the traffic situation in Cebu will improve, especially we're approaching the Burr months? So I think it's going to get worse before it gets better. What are your thoughts on the traffic situation in Cebu in the next few months, or maybe like the next 6 to 12 months?
My mom kasi is an accountant, and very early we would be reminded that numbers are an exact science. So sometimes when I argue with people, I back it up with numbers.
Yes.
Oftentimes you get into an argument because people refuse to look at the numbers. But the first question I will ask, if you want to talk about implementation of the rules, for example, in Cebu City, Mandawi, or wherever, how many parking slots have we designated in all our roads? In each of the LGUs, what is their inventory of parking slots? That's number one. Number two, how many kilometers of road network do we have? When I mean kilometers of road network, we're talking about single lane road networks, whether one road is 3 lanes or 2 lanes. Why? Because when you can measure your road network, you can now divide it against the dimension of a vehicle. So if an average vehicle is 4 or 5 meters, all you have to do is you say 1,000 kilometers of road network, you divide that by 5 meters, that's the capacity of your roads.
Are you able to get those figures?
Wa pa man ko na mayor. You continue interviewing me, people will vote for me already. But you know,
and they should. But what I'm trying to say is that information readily available?
Why not? I mean, these guys can afford to put holes on roads that are still perfectly okay. So how can they not do an inventory of how many kilometers of road
can you explain that? Nganong lungagan man lang daan nga dili pa guba? What's the purpose of that? Because I think it's a legal purpose, right? You cannot have a project. What's the purpose of that? What's the rationale?
They're trying to simplify the demolition process.
Okay.
So they put holes so that it will be easy to demolish.
Oh, okay. So
mura na siya.
Pero it's a perfectly good in good condition.
Well, the decision on which roads that they should fix is a wisdom that is Solomonic in my in my opinion lang. Pero akong point lagi inani, it all boils down to the choices we make as a people. I mean, you and me and people in this room and the people who are listening to your show. I mean, we have been blessed with an opportunity to vote, and that is where our voices are supposed to be heard, no? But we have very little demand for accountability. Ako, I have this paradox. Kay sige ko ingon sa mga tao, nagi mo reklamo sumbong sa 8888. And then my boss in Manila says, imong region na pinakadaghag sumbong sa 8888. Alangan, sige man konsulti sa radyo, sumbong sa 8888. You know, yeah. I could have just shut my mouth.
Okay.
No? and say, ay, saba ng 8888. Uy. But I have so many complaints
Complaints,
coming
yes.
through 8888. When you look at where we are today, the only question you will ask is, how did we get here
Exactly.
today?
That was actually my first question. What the process in which brought us to where we are today? I think it's a long story. And you mentioned mo katong 25-year-old project, man. So I guess that's sort of what happened, right? They did not implement the study suggestions, right? The 21 points.
You know, talking about Joel Garganera, he did a very nice initiative in the last term he was councilor, and he wanted to index the traffic laws of Cebu City, and the former mayor then rejected it. No? Why is it important to index the traffic laws? Because if I were somebody running CTOM or someone who was interested to know what is legal and what is illegal, all I have to do is look at that indexed law, and everything would be there. Because we have so many traffic laws that are not indexed together. Wala ba gi-compile ba? So, only CTOM would have that. But in chaos thrives opportunity, especially for the unscrupulous ones. In much the same way, LTO before me, no, and a long time in the past, would have broken aircons, broken seats, and people would not like to stay there very long, and then they look for the fixer who can fix it for you. So they fix what is broken. The system that is in our midst today has to be simpler, right? You want to fix traffic in Cebu City? Talk about one-way roads. We don't even know our road capacity. But let me simplify the concept for you and all our listeners and viewers here. Inagasinulog, asa ang mga sakyanan? Naabay sakyanan? Wala man.
Mga lakaw ra mga tao, right?
Oh, second, long holidays. Long holidays. Wala ang mga tao, di ba? Because Cebu is a transient place. A lot of the people that live here are transients. So, those transients, imagine if they were not here, then only those who live here would be here.
So what are you suggesting?
You have to put that into the proper consideration.
Yeah.
How many percent using our roads are not from Cebu? So that means they're not going to be familiar with our traffic rules, our laws. So, unsa man i-educate na nimo sila one by one until they learn? No. You simplify their understanding of what is possible and not possible if you are in Cebu. For example, you want to start clamping on those who park on the roads. Why don't you just make that road one way? Let people park, make revenue from the parking every day. That's better than clamping. Why? Because every day na kay consistency of income. Next, by one-way roads, you can now optimize the presence of existing road networks, because rather than forcing two vehicles on opposing directions, you're simplifying the flow.
As LTO regional director, can you
No,
recommend
I
those
cannot.
things?
Well, I can recommend as a recommendation.
Okay.
At the most.
I remember saying this about somebody in politics a few years ago. He was a private individual. He was from the corporate world like you, and he got eaten up by the system. What I'm trying to say is, somebody who's ideal like you, who has all these principles from the corporate world, it was either he would just go with the flow or get out of the of politics, or become one of them. You know, just go with the flow and become one of the sharks. Vic, I know you're very ideal. I know where you're coming from, and your frustrations are my frustrations, because I am also not in public service. I'm in the private sector, and I feel your pain. But my fear is, I hope I'm not correct. I hope I'm wrong. Is that you're so frustrated that the things that you want to implement from your corporate eyes, from a different world, implemented in the world of politics, will be almost impossible to achieve, and then you will get frustrated, and you'll either get out of here, or you're going to become one of them. Which is it going to be, Vic?
One, I've set my I've set a limit for myself.
Okay.
Said I will not go beyond a certain period.
Okay.
And that certain period
It'll be such a waste.
Di man? There is no monopoly of bright people or intelligent people, no. I've set a
Cut off, sort of.
Cut
Yeah.
off, no?
Deadline. Yeah. So what's your deadline? Yeah.
when the president steps down,
Okay.
then if I'm still fortunate for him to give me his trust, then
Okay.
I will continue to be where I will be until the time he says, do, naog na diha do, kay matamparosan sa di kag buanga ka. So, I'm very clear about that. I live that culture every day. My table, my desk does not have paperwork that needs to be signed the next day. I only leave my office when all the paperwork are signed. No? I have no personal stuff in my office. And my mindset is I will finish today what I can finish today. And whatever it is that we plan for tomorrow, we plan it to a point that it can be executed by others. So I don't make myself a fixture where I am. When you have that mindset, it simplifies things for somebody like me. Because my belief is very simple that this is fate. And fate always favors the prepared. So I'm prepared to leave on the day when I'm asked to leave.
In the meantime, you're gonna do your job.
In the meantime, I'm going to do my job. I'm going to fight who I will fight. No? Makes my life more exciting.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So,
And speaking of fights, I know we have some time limitations, and I know you have to go in a while. I know you have an important meeting in City Hall, as you mentioned earlier. But Bobby Nalzaro has been on your ass, on your case for a few days now, for a few weeks now. What is Bobby Nalzaro's beef with Vic and Dick? What's going on, man?
well, Bobby Nalzaro is a guy that I would consider a has-been.
Okay.
Much like the person he calls the same term, no? Una, he doesn't control conversations anymore, no? He's a memorabilia to an era gone by.
Memorabilia.
Right?
Did you hear that, Bobby?
Yeah, I mean, somebody like Bobby Nalzaro will affect someone who is different,
Okay.
but not me. If at all, I appreciate the effort, no? Because every great movie, and I wrote this on my wall, no? When I was watching Kingsman, si V, Valentine had this conversation with Harry.
Okay.
Itong wala ka kita as Kingsman, tanawan na ninyo.
Appeal sa I didn't watch that. It was
Kingsman.
like a James Bond type of movie, right?
And he said, the best James Bond movies of all time had the best villains. Obviously, between Bobby and me, I could not be the villain because I'm the more handsome guy. Diba? You couldn't even walk straight. I don't even think he can still have a hard-on.
But what is his beef with you? What is he complaining about?
Let's just say that Bobby Nalzaro is doing what he does best.
Okay.
He's a mercenary.
Okay.
Oh, he's a mercenary at best. And for all the many enemies I gained doing what I do, muna ang giingon sa Bisaya, gibalato na ako nimo, Bob. Mo bag, at least you still have your clients. Right?
Okay, Vic. I know we have to wrap this interview up, but as perhaps my final question, are you hopeful about the traffic situation here in Cebu? The solutions that you mentioned, all these super mega, solutions, will they be implemented during your watch, during the next 2-3 years? Are you hopeful? Can we give our Cebuano motorists hope in driving a less chaotic city of Cebu? What's your message to our Cebuanos who are watching this perhaps from their mobile devices, stuck in traffic, because they have all the luxury of time? That's why nananaon lang sila og podcast na to.
Pero magbantay mo, dakpan mo ada. Anti-distracted driving app. Well, number one, if you happen to follow or somehow see the DOTR Facebook page,
Okay.
we are being constantly reminded, and that's a real and active reminder from the Secretary of Transportation, si Secretary Art Tugade,
Okay.
that our days are literally numbered. So we have a countdown of the days left for us who work in DOTR of the things that we need to accomplish. And in my memory, that's about 1,000 days something. And within those 1,000 something days, we are hoping that the IITS will be able to deliver on what is being coined as a partial operability concept, no? That a certain portion of it will start to run so people can experience that change that's happening. Second, I have high hopes, no? Because I think we have a period of unity in Cebu, no? And even
In terms of our politics, right?
in terms of our politics and our politicians. And we have better quality politicians now. The old ones, I mean, not the old ones, but the ones that have been there for some time. Eventually, I think in the age of social media, in the age of open information.
Maybe you could whip them to shape, Vic. Di naman da?
Di na madai. Hadlokon. Two congressmen went to my boss and asked me to be relieved or taken out of my role, no? But it's all par for the course. Yeah. And that happens.
Vic, there's an old cliche that says something like, you don't want to see an old dog do new tricks, right? But that's not true though. According to them, it's actually okay, and an old dog can learn new tricks. We just don't want to see the old dog do new tricks. Do you really think that these old politicians are hopeless? Wala naging pag-asa na sila, Vic.
No.
We cannot let them see what you see.
I respect what they have done.
Okay.
And I don't think that we can categorize them into old politicians and young politicians.
Okay.
You can only categorize them into two things: the idiots and the smart ones.
Okay.
The idiots, you don't really want them, whether they are young or old.
Mm-hmm.
But the smart ones, you always hope and pray for them that they don't get eaten by the system, as how you mentioned it, no? In the end, these are politicians. They need to get elected. And we have to empower ourselves, no? Being voters, no? Being participants to our future, to be more vocal, to be more participative in where we want to bring our city in the future. No?
And if there are projects that are terrible, be outraged, right?
Yeah.
Be outraged.
When you are on social media, di ka mo comment gani ko ni Nalsaro, gamay ra kayo ang mo like. Kaya kung uba mga amigo nga negosyante, hadlok man sila igon.
Oh, mo good.
Oh, yun sila. Uy, bay, lingawan ako si mong comment. Sabad, ay, wa man ka ni like. Talawan kang dako.
Okay, Vic, before you go, we will have to have maybe one or two questions from our viewers.
Sure.
Okay, we have a question here from Joel Melgo. He says that kato ko nung emergency powers nga
Grace Po did not approve it yet.
Wala pa gi-approve.
Wala pa gi-endorse sa committee ni Senator Grace Po.
When you say emergency power for the traffic situation, what does that mean exactly?
Well, a lot of things. Number one, road right of way.
Okay.
Second, the process for biddings. Biddings, when you look at the law that defines procurement, there are minimum timelines.
Okay.
100-something days is minimum. So even if you can bid it today, you cannot, because you have to comply with certain timelines.
Mm-hmm.
3, policy. For example, today no one is really in charge of traffic in the whole of Metro Cebu. Point me to one person. There's no one. I'm not.
You're not even
I'm
the
not
right person,
responsible for traffic direction and management.
Why not? There's no position?
Because that's not part of my job.
No, what I mean is, why is there no one person?
Because it has been given to the local government unit.
So who's in Cebu City? Who do we get outraged to?
Cebu City is CTOM or CCTO, and then Mandawi has Mandawi team, and then Lapu-Lapu has another unit. Talisay has Joy Tumulak, etc., etc.
So how can you name
because
the
the
from
emergency
Talisay?
traffic bill, should have created a point person for traffic in Metro Cebu.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Vic, I know you have to go. Any final messages, especially to all the motorists out there who are scratching their heads now, driving and negotiating the traffic of Cebu City and maybe perhaps Mandaue City, Lapu-Lapu City, etc., etc., etc. Do you think they have hope?
Oh, there's always hope. No?
Talk to them.
There's always hope. When you wake up in the morning, there's always hope. um, when we look at all of the things that we're experiencing today, uh, of course, we can always blame somebody else, no? More conveniently. But little things we can do. Keep the intersections clear, no? Don't park on national roads even if a no parking sign doesn't exist. Be more courteous. Extend your patience. Let's not ostracize the habal-habal drivers because we think that they're cutting on our lanes. Because 10,000 people rely on them to get home or to work or to their schools at the right time. Our problems are complex. No? But in the end, we remain to be people who live in the same place. So, in as much as I'd like to say, we can catch all of them, it doesn't fix the problem. The only way we can fix the problem is be participative. We have groups like Cebu Road Heroes. This show, for example, your participation allows us to know what your sentiments are. Our Facebook page in LTO is a place where you can tell us what is wrong with what we're doing and we can address it right away. In the end, this is what you call participatory governance, and that is the real essence of a democratic country like the Philippines. We do what we can to fix things, but in the end, like I said, it's all in our hands. No, we have the power.
You mean the people? You mean
Kita?
Yeah.
You, me,
Yeah.
everyone. No? I don't have the solution to traffic. I will tell you honestly. Where I am today as LTO director, I'm doing what I can, and I'm not here to please everyone. But we do have to follow and implement the law as the law is written. And in those occasions, it may not appeal to all, and it will irritate and aggravate a lot. But what we can assure you is a transparent government, or at least where we are in LTO. We can assure you that we are dedicated to improving the services that we bring to the people who do business with us. Individually, as someone who lives here, what I can tell you is that I am not losing hope, but I have to extend my patience.
and so should you,
Yes.
our viewers. And I think that wraps up the Pilosopo podcast. Thank you so much, Vic Kaindik, LTO Regional Director for Region 7. Thank you so much, Mr.
you.
Vic Kaindik.
Thank you, Jake.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much.
Afternoon.
And we will have some questions from our friends who will be watching this one on a more delayed basis. Maybe I can just forward you the
Yeah,
questions
sure,
as well,
sure.
or maybe tag you or something. Thank you so much, guys. You have been watching the Pilosopo podcast. I'll catch you again next episode, okay? Thank you so much. All right, we did it.